What is up, fellow sickos? I'm Dan Favale coming at you with another 2025-2026 NBA season look ahead. We are on to the Detroit Pistons, which means it's time to talk to Laz Jackson. He is an editor for Detroit Bad Boys. Follow him on the social machines at Laz Chance. That's at LazChance. Laz, how the heck are you doing? This is going to be a different conversation than we've had over the past 5, 6, 7 years about the Pistons, I think.
I think so too, Dan. I'm doing well. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to be here. I I was telling you in the pre-show how I re-upped on my season tickets, and if you had asked me would I do that like 3 years ago, the answer would have been like no, like never. It's like we're finally in a space I feel comfortable shoveling thousands of dollars to this team.
That's big news. Honestly, I think we could end the episode right there, and that just encapsulates like where the
What
Pistons
an
are at right now.
endorsement!
Yeah. So, man, last season, just if you go back and listen to our off-season discussion, doesn't really turn anything out like we were expecting per se. What's like your? I hate to boil it down to this, but what's like the single biggest revelation or takeaway you had from how last year just sort of unfolded?
I think the biggest thing you have to take away from last year was the on court and off court leadership role Cade Cunningham took and the elevation of his game to an all NBA level talent and how that accelerated what the Pistons were looking to do, right? There were so many moments last year where Cade came out and settled these guys in, made the correct play, made the right decisions, got them in a space where winning felt like something that was supposed to happen as opposed to something that like occasionally occurred, right? To me, like that was his like that was his like so lowercase s star season. Like we will get into Cade later, I'm sure. But if you ask me like what my main takeaway was, is like, okay, we finally got like a guy we can build everything around in Cade, and we know that for sure. When you hear Trajan Langdon's like postseason press availability, like he kind of says the same thing, right? Like okay, we finally got this team in a space where we like everything we built in the shooting. You and me, Dan, we've talked about shooting around Cade for literally his entire career. They finally put that in place, and like you see the results. And so now it becomes a matter of, okay, what are the ancillary secondary pieces that we need to put around this guy? Answering some of those questions is like the important thing for the short and long term. But for now, they have a capital G guy, which is what you need in the NBA to succeed, especially what you need in the Eastern Conference, which is really weak right now, to succeed.
Right.
And they can build on that. That's my big takeaway.
I think that has to be the biggest takeaway because it's like he's the most important player in the building even before last season, and now there was questions. You and I didn't really fall on this end of the spectrum, but there was just questions: is he that guy? And to know
Yeah.
he's that guy is huge. I think what also kind of struck me last year was, and I think this has to do with JB Bickerstaff, and I'm curious your thoughts on what were like the biggest stylistical or philosophical differences you noticed from the Monty Williams era that lasted. Was that a decade? I don't know how long that Monty Williams era lasted.
It felt like a decade, Dan. So
Yeah.
bad.
So, but I think what also struck me is just so you made some changes, but like the
Mhm.
defense gets a lot better without focusing on adding a bunch of like defensive. I know you have Ausar Thompson. I know you drafted Ron Holland the second. That struck me. The ability to like they still were able to get like Ron Holland the second played in a lot of games, even though the Pistons were winning, and then you just get to the playoffs, and like it wasn't just a happy to be here situation. And I get, that's the most recent thing we've seen from the Pistons, like notwithstanding Summer League. So it just struck me to where it was, oh, like are they just on the precipice of something even better than we thought this regular like that entire Knicks series was like a few calls just from going the Pistons' way. Probably. And that's kind of insane to think about when you go back and reflect upon where this team was this time last year when you and I were talking.
Yeah. I think the thing that JB really instilled in this team was a sense of identity, which is like kind of nebulous, right? And it's funny because like it's a little played up. It's like, oh, their identity is like defense and getting on transition and making shots. And like, oh, a Detroit's team's identity is defense. Like, how shocking, how new, how novel. But it really, like, you could tell that they were just much more certain of what everyone on the court was supposed to be doing on both ends of the floor. Was it always like the most inventive basketball genius stuff I had ever seen in my life? No. There were large stretches in which the entire plan for like offensive bench units was like, hey, Malik, can you make 4 threes in 6 minutes and just like keep things going? And he did it sometimes, and that was great. But the team knew that was the plan, right? If nothing else, like at least all 5 guys are following the same plan. When you looked at Monty Williams, there was just no sense of cohesion, no sense of identity, no sense of like what everybody was supposed to be doing, and not even like in a these guys are competing way, in a did I mess up? Did you mess up? Like was there something like 2 rotations ago that got messed up, and like that's where everything went? And there was just so much less of that this year, and that was so valuable. It was kind of Budenholzer-esque, right?
Okay.
And that if you take care of all of like the little things, like that compounds enough to where you get to a space where like, again, like winning is something that's supposed to happen as opposed to something that like occasionally happens.
Looking at the actual offseason, they got thrown a curveball with the Malik Beasley stuff.
Yeah.
He could still technically come back. They have the non-bird rights. Whatever ends up happening, the gambling probe, he might be in the clear. He might not. He's going to face disciplinary action. How do you think they did in terms of pivoting, though? Because it looks like there was a deal that was going to be on the table, 3 years and $42 million. Instead, you wind up getting Duncan Robinson for Simone Fontecchio, and you were able to get Caris LeVert. Just how do you think they did in terms of like the pivot for what it doesn't seem? Maybe it didn't catch them off guard, but this was definitely something that did impact how they went about the offseason for sure.
No, absolutely. And for the record, there was a report in the Detroit News a couple of days ago, I think, that he paid back the rent that he owed at his apartment building in Detroit, and I think has moved back in for whatever that's worth. So
did he pay his barber though? That's what I'm still.
Is the barber and the dentist, right?
The barber and the dentist, which is just like for the barber, I understand NBA players travel in different circles than me. I didn't know that you could put like barber expenses on layaway, basically. Like it's just not even if you're even having a traveling barber, that's not something I knew was a thing.
It's less layaway. It's like, I got you, man. I got you, man. I got you. And then you look up and it's been 3 months. And it's like, what's going on? But as for the pivot, at first I was disappointed because I thought that in basically like functionally replacing Schroeder and Beasley with LeVert and Duncan, I didn't think they improved. And I thought that they needed to improve to not get kind of stuck where they were last year. Then you look at how everything went for everyone's offseason after the dust settles. And
craziest offseason of all time, right, Laz? Just wild.
But I don't feel like anyone above them in the standings last season did like anything amazing either to like get ahead, right? And you look at teams that were ahead of them, like Boston and Indiana, who are taking gap years functionally. And it's like, okay, there's room for improvement and advancement standing wise without the team like getting way better. I was particularly disappointed in the acquisition of LeVert. I was a really big Nickeil Alexander-Walker guy. I realized like the cap machinations that they would have needed to make a sign and trade happen like probably proved pretty difficult, but they were like reportedly in on him up until the final buzzer. And so I was disappointed they didn't get Nickeil Alexander-Walker more than I was like happy that they did get somebody who can play that role in Caris LeVert. And Duncan Robinson was like, it's very interesting. That was a very interesting signing from a couple of perspectives. Yes, Duncan Robinson replaces the like shooting gravity of Malik Beasley. He does so in like kind of a different way, kind of not a different way. There's a lot of Bam Duncan chemistry that I am not sure that if Duncan's coming off the bench, I'm not sure Isaiah Stewart like draws the same level of defensive attention as Bam Adebayo And so you wonder if like people are just keying in on Duncan, like what does that actually do from like a functional, like how he performs perspective. But just like as a dude who can shoot, like yes, perfect. His contract is also great, very suspiciously structured. If you were of the belief that Malik Beasley is in fact coming back to this team, and so like I think the Pistons did good in the acquisition department. The one thing I'll say, like Tobias Harris is like way down the list, but the thing I was also pretty concerned about was like a long-term plan at the 4 position behind Tobias, who was was an expiring contract this season, and they still kind of don't have that guy. I like Bobi Klintman. I saw Bobi Klintman up close in Summer League, a little bit taller than I expected. I don't think he's the long-term solution at the 4. And so that's still kind of the one like hole in the roster that I'd like to see filled. But I'll give Trenchard the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I ended up liking, and I'd probably like their offseason a lot better if they bring, from a basketball perspective, Beasley back, because Robinson, to your point, the chemistry and bandwidth stuff, like you're not even going to have that with like peak Duren, I don't think, at this point either. So I think he's also really best served if there is like another shooter on the court. So they might be able, the fact that Tobias Harris is there, maybe you can get to some lineups where you have Beasley and Robinson on the court at the same time, since Robinson's played up. I think that he's become like underrated though, in just terms of his gravity and like being able to shake loose and get inside the arc over the past 2 years. So I thought they rebounded nicely there. And I'm actually more of a LeVert guy now, following his Cleveland time, not so much in Atlanta. I just don't think that if you were going to move on from Dennis Schroeder and you don't want to saddle Jaden Ivey maybe with too much, or if you're looking for at least just like, we're trying to develop, but we're also trying to win. I think Caris LeVert is going to be better on ball than Nickeil offensively. Defensively, it's not. It's not a question, obviously. So I thought I was surprised. It seems like generally people are either indifferent or didn't like their offseason, and maybe the 4 spots, like speaking to that. I was mostly a fan though of it.
Yeah. I think it wasn't very flashy, right? They didn't make their Desmond Bane trade. And I think that was what it's reasonable. I think that reasonable expectation is like, hey, like you could make your version of the Desmond Bane trade this offseason. And they didn't do that. And so I think it is underplayed, like what they did. But like you mentioned, like Caris LeVert's really good on and off the ball, enables them to get to lineups where Jaden Ivey, who I was very curious to see like if he could handle that level of primary duty as a creator. It's like maybe he doesn't have to all the time. Like take some of that responsibility off of his plate. That's good. Maybe makes him a more effective player. And so there is like, is Caris LeVert better than Dennis Schroeder? It's like probably about the same, but you needed to replace Dennis Schroeder because without him you were stuck playing like Marcus Sasser extended minutes, who like I like Marcus Sasser, but like I don't think he's an actual. I think he's a point guard. I don't think he's a primary. And so it's like you needed that role, and is a good backup plan for hey, maybe Jaden Ivey isn't ready every night to take on this level of responsibility.
The other thing about their offseason I think kind of bleeds into this season is you mentioned they didn't make their Desmond Bane move. I don't know if now, like even let's say an opportunity that was out there would have made sense. And like Bane in theory, I guess, is a player that could have made sense for them, especially if Beasley wasn't going to be there.
Yeah.
Now just didn't feel like the time because you would have to render these verdicts on, you either then need certain of these young guys to be really good, like make a leap next season, or you need to render a verdict of, well, what are they worth to us if we're shipping them out? Like how much are they value? And I'm also kind of wondering too, so like I respect them not, I would say, reading too much into last season or overreacting to it. But then I also wonder, and I'm always fascinated by this, is like how much more difficult does it get stomaching or prioritizing player development now that there are actual expectations here, to where is there going to be, let's just as an example, a temptation to be like, well, like Jaden Ivey's minutes might not be there as much alongside Cade because Caris LeVert is playing better right now or is the better fit. And it's just, I find that push and pull fascinating. And I thought they did a good job of balancing it all last year. And it helps that like so many of your quote unquote prospects or developing guys were also some of your most important players. But now we're not coming into this season like, oh, like, will the Pistons sniff 30 wins? It's like, no, like the Pistons are a playoff team right now.
Yeah. I think it's like JB did a really good job with that balancing act over the course of last season. I think in the playoffs, we started to see him skew a little bit more towards the veteran side of things. It's a lot of Dennis Schroeder in the playoffs.
Poor Ron Holland. during the playoffs.
Lot of Dennis Schroeder. Not enough Ron Holland.
By the way, I think Karis LeVert's a lot better than Dennis Schroeder. I've never that one year in OKC, I was like, however many years he was there, I was aboard the Schroeder train. But I've probably been too high on Karis LeVert at points too. But the stuff he showed, like off the ball and even defensively in Cleveland, I don't even think it's maybe as like a guy I was going to put raw rim pressure on and like get downhill that way. Yeah, Dennis Schroeder, but I think that's a pretty big upgrade actually going from Schroeder to LeVert for what it's worth. It might not be worth anything.
I'll take it. But yeah, I think that I think because there was so much success in the regular season last year, the expectation is from the front office on down is to build on that success. And so you can start to get to a position where you can start telling guys like, hey, like we are trying to win. If you are not helping us try to win, like you need to get with the program and have that be and like have like not the goal not be like we don't want to pay you or like you need your shots so you can get the contract. The goal being like we need to win. It's like if you win, like you will probably get paid, which is what leads us into the extension talks for Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren.
Well, let's start with Jaden Ivey, but before we get to extension, how much do you buy into what you saw from him last season before the leg injury? And it almost feels like a two-layer question because it's, okay, he shot 1,000,000,000% on spot-up threes, 45.2, whatever it was. Great. But, like, what is he, like, in the context of, like, well, when Cade Cunningham is on the bench, like, how do you trust it? It feels like you have to trust him, like, in two separate roles to be considered a long-term piece. And just from my 10,000-foot view, it's like, feels like he can play the one, like really well, or we can at least have hope that the Jaden Ivey partnership is going to be fine, if not great. But like, what is he independent of that?
Yeah, I don't think this is going to sound like a cop out. We didn't get enough information about Jaden Ivey last year. Well, so the timing of his injury was atrocious because if you look at the Pistons season last year, they were a below 500 to slightly below 500 team until like Ausar Thompson got back, and then like a week later Jaden Ivey got hurt, and then they were like a good team. So to me, Ausar Thompson is like the secret sauce that makes this Pistons team work, and we never really got to see how Jaden Ivey and Ausar Thompson like balance each other out on the floor. But in what we did get to see from Jaden Ivey, I thought he did a really effective job playing off of Cade Cunningham, shooting 1,000,000,000% on spot-up threes, like helped in that regard a ton. I thought he did a better job of getting other guys involved. There was like some nice chemistry with Duren. There was some, hey, like this Malik Beasley guy seems pretty good. Like maybe I can just get him the ball and like not have to worry about as much things happening. But the thing I've been harping on for years was still there. The defense was still kind of not in the place where you'd like it to be if he's the guy, if he's the second guy in the backcourt, right? Again, like Cade Cunningham is the star, or Cade Cunningham is the sun. Everything's revolves around him. Cade Cunningham is actually kind of slightly above average defender, but you don't want to ask him to do that much on defense. But having a guy in Jaden Ivey next to him who you don't trust on defense puts more pressure on him to be more of a two-way player. And if you could get another guy in that spot who would take some of that burden off of Cade, I think you'd see better results. And so it's tricky. I think Jaden is a really good player. We are starting to, after 4 years, we're getting into like, he is a good player. Does he help you win territory? Which is where like Cam Thomas found himself unsuccessfully, which is where like Jalen Green is the center of a Durant deal, but nobody thinks like Jalen Green is a winning player, right?
Right.
And so it's like, where on that sliding scale does Jaden Ivey fit, and does he fit better if he makes a lower amount on his extension, right? I've heard that the extension talks have not gone as well as either party would have liked. I've heard that he probably won't sign an extension unless like something changes. And it could just be a situation in which it's like, hey, he comes in, he shoots 45% on spot up threes again for the first 30 games of the season. And you're just like, okay, like here's the extension, like here's more money than we perhaps are willing to give, but like you seem to have proved yourself. And the injury was kind of a freak injury. Like Cole Anthony just decided to play football on the basketball court. And so I'm not worried about like how that'll impact him like long term or anything, which is good.
Would you be on, when you're looking at his extension eligibility, would you be on team like sort of like the Jalen Green deal where the salary is probably inflated a little bit higher than you like, but it's so short term, it's still easy to trade? Or are you trying to get like, get the 4 or 5 years or the 4 years with a team option and like the numbers of like, what matters more to you? Like the length that if you're the Pistons, or just from your perspective, what would matter more to you? Like keeping the price point in a certain range, or having him for the maximum number of years?
I think if I like climb into the mind of Trajan Langdon, I think it has to be the years. I think if I remember this correctly, he has not given out a deal to anyone not named Cade Cunningham for more than 2 years.
Oh, wow. I didn't even realize that.
Yeah. Like he's acquired guys who have like had multiple years on their contracts or whatever. But yeah. And so I think that if you gave them like the option, they would say like, yeah, we could go like a 2+1 at what people would consider like an elevated dollar amount and see how that plays out. It's easier to trade, especially in today's like weird cap environment. I think fewer years is easier to trade than a longer term thing.
I think what's also semi-interesting, I don't view it as a huge part, is that if you sign him to an extension, it just gets a lot harder to trade him this season if you decide to do something in the middle of the year.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, just from a team perspective, I don't know how you could sit and look at how restricted free agency is playing out right now, even with Cam Thomas signing his qualifying offer. Like they were offering him the Nets basically less than mid-level money.
Yes.
So I get that. But like you want to wait and see if all these guys sign their qualifying offers, then the Pistons, okay, you clock that. But I don't know how you look at what's happened in restricted free agency over the years, where actually a current Piston is the only guy in years who's gotten an offer sheet from a different team that wasn't his own. It was Paul Reed, and that was just built to mess with the Sixers. Like
I forgot about that.
Yeah. So I think I'm wondering, when they're not just auto max guys or anything sort of close to that, like a Şengün type who probably could have gotten the max, honestly. I wonder how reticent teams are going to be. Well, then go to restricted free agency. We'll see what happens. And this might be one of those cases, especially when you don't think you have enough information on that player.
Yeah. And you look at like the Jabari Smith extension, right? And that was a long extension for a like good amount of money, not a crazy amount of money, for a guy that I think, from my outside looking in perspective, like they think plays a role on like the good version of that team. It would be great if Jaden Ivey would be willing to do something like that. For now, it doesn't seem like that's the case. So it's like, okay, so we'll see how it plays out. But if you just stick to on the court, like he was effective last year. He fits next to Cade Cunningham. Less than I would like, but still pretty good. And I'm curious to see how a backcourt of like him and Karis LeVert plays against like the bench lineups of other Eastern Conference teams. Like, can that be a thing you buy minutes with in the playoffs, like as Cade Cunningham sits? That like these are the questions I'm starting to ask myself.
Where are you at? I really want to have strong opinions about Jalen Duren. I promise you, I really do. But this is, I think, year 3 of me basically. Like, I was like, after year 1, you were kind of hyping him up. I was really into it. But I can't muster strong feelings about Jalen Duren. I think he got better as the year went on last year. There wasn't a lot of like the stuff we were seeing on offense in year 2. There wasn't as much of that.
The QB keepers, less of that.
So, but just like, I thought he would be even better defensively than he ended up being, now that they're like, especially when you look at the way the Pistons defended overall, some of the stuff that he could do as a passer, I love it. I love his shoulders. Those things are massive. Where do you land on him, and what is like something that you're just like tracking most closely entering his 4th year?
Yeah. If you if you ask Jalen Duren and you ask Trajan Langdon, they were both disappointed in his play through the first 25 games of the year. After that, I don't know what clicked, but something seemed to click. He was much more effective as a defensive player and as an offensive player, and I thought he played pretty well for, what is he, like 22? I thought he played pretty well for a 22-year-old in a playoff series. Granted, Tobias Harris took the Karl Anthony Towns matchup because there was no way in hell that like they could get away with that matchup on defense. But as a rebounder, as an interior presence, as a guy whose passing ability, I think, opens up more lineup configurations around like two non-shooters in him and Ausar Thompson, like than you would think. You saw in the playoff series a lot of chemistry between those guys on like short roll actions to get Ausar paint touches and paint finishes over a Knicks defense that was like had Josh Hart and Jalen Brunson on the back line. It's like, wait, what? Like, why am I underneath the basket while Ausar Thompson's flying at me? So I think there's some there offensively more than you would say like, oh, hey, I'm worried about Cade with a bunch of non-shooters, right? Mm-hmm. I think his youth and the fact that he like did improve so much more on defense as the season went on still leads me to believe there's some growth in that area. A big part of that growth is going to have to be becoming more comfortable defending in space, defending stretch bigs. Defending stretch bigs has been a huge issue for him like over the course of his entire career. So for Duren, to me, is like, it's always been a lot more clear to me how he fits alongside Cade Cunningham than Jaden Ivey. And so for Duren, it's more of a question of like, what does he want? Does he want years or dollars, right? Whatever he wants, like I would be a lot more willing to give it to him. Also because like the center market is not nearly as robust as the like shooting guard guy who scores market. So I'm a lot more comfortable handing JD an extension. I thought he played better. I think there's still room for him to grow, especially on defense. There's some anonymous tweets that he grew like 3 inches. And it's like, if that happens, like, sure. If that doesn't happen, like, I don't know why. Like, that's pure September, like, Twitter bullshittery.
That he grew 3 inches since what? Like, this past...
Since, like, over the summer. Yeah.
Is that even physical? Is he wearing lifts in his shoes? Is that what this is then?
It's like, he's young. It's possible. But, like, also, like, do I think he grew 3 inches? Like, no. Like, do I want to see if he shows up in camp and he's like all of a sudden like way taller than Paul Reed? Like, yes, actually, I'm actually legit curious to see that. But yeah, just I'm a lot more comfortable with how JD plays and fits into the Pistons team like moving forward.
So if they were to give him like the Jabari Smith deal, what is that? What was that? 5 years and 122?
5 somewhere in there.
Yeah. So if it was 5 and 125, that's something that you would do as the Pistons.
That's a little higher than I would go. But I'd like that deal. I think a Cade Duren pick and roll is like the core of what you want to be doing on offense for the next half decade anyway. So yeah, lock those guys up.
How do you feel about, because you're mentioned like the Ausar Thompson, Jalen Duren dynamic, like you said, it impressed you some last year. How do you feel about that long term, and also like how much does that need to inform the urgency of, well, like we need to have the long term Tobias Harris in place to ensure that there's always going to be enough spacing around that?
Yeah. Jalen Duren got a lot better on defense when Ausar Thompson showed up. And so I do think that's a little bit of a symbiotic relationship on the defensive end, which is good. I think that we've kind of always talked about Duren's passing as this like mythical skill that's kind of underrated and kind of underutilized. And I think that Ausar Thompson, the cutter, like really unlocked that area of Jalen Duren's game. Again, like we saw that a lot in the Knicks series. So I think, like, again, like we haven't talked about Ausar yet, but like Ausar is like really just like the glue and secret sauce that like makes this whole like Pistons team work. And so he's very, very valuable to this team. So it's good to have players that kind of like work with that. And Duren is one.
Let's talk about Ausar Thompson.
Yes, let's do that.
Just I don't have, if you'd like to extol his defense a little bit, I'm here for it. I have no notes on there. He would have made all defense had he been eligible last year. I think that's.
Did you see the clip of him defending an entire possession against the Hawks?
I don't know if I've seen that clip. I'd like to think that I've seen all the Ausar Thompson clips, but is that the one where he's guarded like 8 players? Okay.
He switches like 3 times, cuts off the ball handler like twice, like rotates, gets the steal, and he's everywhere on the court. And you're like, how does he do this? How does he do this? And he just does. It's wild to see. I was at a game. Oh man, what game was this? I think this was a game against San Antonio, and he got the ball. He's got a steal. He took off on a fast break, and my seats are like I'm not like courtside, but like I'm a couple rows up off the
I
court.
thought you were like on the bench. I thought they consulted you.
I wish my buddies have sent me like, hey, is this you? And like you can see me on TV, which is kind of funny. But like he jumped, and I legit thought he was gonna like jump into the crowd like with us. Like he jumped so high. It's just like you see this person, you see him in person. It's like this is an amazing athlete, and his anticipation and his for lack of a better word, like basketball IQ and like sense of like where everything is supposed to be on the court is just like it's mind blowing. So I have all the confidence in the world that Ausar Thompson is going to be a really good player. However, he still can't shoot. The shot looked a little bit more fluid like as the year went on, but it still didn't go in. His free throw percentage went up, which was good sign. But you still see teams kind of ignore him offensively, and so he has to get creative to contribute offensively. Would it be easier to be creative around Ausar, like if he could do one of shoot or dribble at a much higher level? Like yes. Like which one? I don't know. Whichever one he could like pick one, do what you got to do, like get to the level that you can do it.
I tend to tilt towards what I view as more realistic, and so the handle stuff feels like I can see that continuing to improve versus this guy all of a sudden is shooting 36% on 3 or 4 spot up 3-point attempts per game is sort of where I think that would be more important. And also like a lot of it's full floor stuff, but when they would put the ball in his hands, like they had some really fun offensive plays with him last year. And so I think to me that feels more realistic, but then it does open up. You have to watch who's around him as well. And like defenses are just gonna, if you ever set a ball screen for him, like defenses aren't gonna care. Yeah, like they're
exactly.
gonna be on the baseline at that point. So
well, it was funny. You could see plays where he's so athletic that sometimes like it was the Ben Simmons things, whereas like if you went too far under, all of a sudden like you're just at the 8-foot mark in the paint, and then he's in the paint too, and you're like, oh wait, actually I didn't want him to get to the paint, but it's too late. And so yeah, it's just so I do think the handle is probably more realistic. I wonder, like I don't think he needs to shoot like 40% on corner threes or whatever. You talked about this with Justin Rowan on the Cleveland look ahead, but like the reason Isaac Okoro like didn't work in Cleveland is because like no one cared if he shot 40% on corner threes. They would just like let him do it. And so I do wonder like how good Ausar would have to shoot before teams like started to close out on him, because once you start drawing the closeouts, like that's when you get the blow bys, like that's when you get the rotations, like that's when you get the defense moving and shifting and opening things up for everybody else. And I think it'd be really difficult for Ausar to get to the level where he starts drawing closeouts on a consistent basis. I do think that improving the handle is probably easier. But for me, it's less like, oh, he needs to tween hezzy like his way like all the way to the basket, and more like, can you operate in short areas? If they are like sinking under a screen, are you able to like jet off the screen, get to a spot, and like draw help again? Like, are you drawing help? Are you making things happen? If they're sinking too low, it's like, can we get to a spot where like, hey, like all of a sudden Duren's man is up like 12 feet and Duren's behind him, and then good things are happening. And so like, yeah, I think there's a definitely, that's what I would be working on if I were him. Not underplayed, but like this is his first real full off season after the blood clots he suffered last year, which again like delayed. I don't think he started like the first 30 games of the year. So like that's really good. I'm really excited to see that. So yeah, I think he really, really matters to this team. He holds the defense together. He contributes just enough on offense. The havoc and like deflections and steals he creates contributes a lot to what the Pistons want to do in transition. They were one of the most prolific transition teams last year, and like he and Ron Holland and Jaden Ivey were like a really big part of that. And so like, and that was part of their identity, was like not getting stuck in half court all the time. It was like, let's just score like 15 points in transition and call it a day. And so he's really, really important to this team. To me, he is the second most important player on this team behind Cade Cunningham.
I think that's right. I guess the argument would be made for Jaden Ivey would be the alternative. I don't know who would be, unless you think Ron Holland can become the second offensive option type of guy, which maybe not rule out. But I think, yeah, that feels like I don't want to say the only answer, but I just don't know who you would argue for and feel good about over him.
Yeah.
Ron Holland, what do you think of his rookie season? And now that the jumpers that one Knicks game did a lot of heavy lifting in Summer League for his percentages, but he got him up. He got him up.
He looked. I went to Vegas for the first time this year. I got to see Ron Holland up close and personal. I got to dap up his dad and be like, "Your son's gonna be a star," and he got to laugh at that. But Ron looked so much more comfortable just like shooting and having the ball in his hands against Summer League competition than he did against like real actual NBA competition last season. But I hope that comfort and ease translates to like real improvements this season, because like what we saw, like he was a really good like energy guy. He had these big impact plays. You could feel the like energy in the arena when like he'd get a steal and also like tear down the court on a breakaway. It's like really cool. He was like picking guys up full court and like getting people out of rhythm and out of sync. You like to see that. His shooting was not as like, he was much more highly projected as a shooter than Ausar Thompson. His shooting was real bad last year. And so you obviously hope that, but his shot looks a lot more fluid and comfortable taking shots. They just didn't go in. And so everybody kind of assumes that like he will shoot better, which is good. But yeah, like the way he moves, the way he is able to just like move through traffic, move through space. It's like him and Ausar together are kind of a pairing you would like to preserve. I think that, how do I put this? There is a world where like Ron becomes the second most important player on the team behind Cade. And okay, that world involves like Ausar not developing like offensively as much as we would like. But you got to remember, like Ron was a super prospect, went to the Ignite, scored 20 points a game in the G League, which I feel like everybody scores 20 points a game in the G League, but like it's still not easy, right? At like 18 years old or whatever he was, is still really young, is being molded into the type of player that fits alongside the rest of these guys, as opposed to like, I don't know, getting in like Washington and just being told like, hey, like get up like 25 shots a game and like let's see what happens. And I think that was really valuable for him, getting the coaching staff, or getting a coaching staff that wants him to develop his game in a sustainable way, as opposed to getting in a coaching staff where it's like, yeah, man, just like let's see what you can do. I think will make his game like more sustainable and efficient. I wonder about positionality. He's still young, so it's time for his body to fill out, but he's kind of lean. And like if you look at his dad's kind of lean. So even if he's 6'8", like I don't know if he's going to be like banging bodies at the 4 for his entire career. And so it's like, all right. And so you start putting things together. So it's like, okay, Cade, Ausar, Ivy, Duren, Ron, like does that lineup have enough size to compete when you see teams like, you know, Houston deciding to go double big all the time, or Milwaukee like going with Turner and Giannis and Portis maybe all at the same time, or you see like even like a Denver, right, with Jokic and Aaron Gordon and Cam Johnson. It's like all these dudes are big, right?
Mhm.
And so I do wonder, like, his body needs to fill out to kind of play the position that would benefit the Pistons most. I don't know if that benefits him most, but like that's where we end up. And so I do wonder about that. But like otherwise, like I think his role for this team, we talked a little bit about how like there's a sliding scale between like development and trying to win, and the Pistons did a really good job integrating Ron Holland last year, getting him minutes, having him play. I believe he played 81 games last year. And the only game he didn't play was because he was suspended for that thing in Minnesota that was kind of BS.
Yeah, that's right.
And so like there isn't as much, or like because he did it last year, I believe there also like isn't wiggle room to go with like how that goes this year. But it will be. My hope is that we get to a place where like not only is it development, but he continues to contribute and expands his offensive role to where like teams are actually forced to guard him, right? But still probably ends up doing it for bench lineups this season.
I think it almost has to be that way where he's doing it for the bench lineup, just because long term, one of him or Ausar Thompson is going to need to develop into a more dynamic perimeter offense. Like that, you mentioned drawing closeouts. Otherwise, the dynamic between having those two and Jalen Duren, it's like those three just barely, injuries factored into some of that, but with Ausar Thompson, but they just barely played together last year. Even Ausar and Holland, I think, were under 300 out possessions under garbage time.
Yeah.
Outside of garbage time, excuse me. And so two of them, of those three on the floor, I think you can make work. Like you'll figure it out. But like the three of them, like that's where it would start to get. You're putting a lot on those other two players, like in terms of their offensive lifts that are on the court with those three.
Yeah, JB was really reticent to put Ron and Ausar on the floor at the same time, even though like Ron, Ausar, Duren is probably like the closest thing you can, or like Ron, Ausar, Stewart is probably like the best like defensive lineup. If you just want defense, that'd be like the core of the best defensive lineup you could put on the floor. And so it's like, yeah, like I would have liked to see that look a little bit more last season. I hope we get to see it a little bit more this season, but it really does depend on Ron in particular developing as a shooter. Again, like I don't think Ausar gets there. I don't know if it matters or not if Ausar gets there. And like I'd come to the games, pre-games, and I'd see JD like taking like 17 footers. And it's like maybe that works, maybe it doesn't. I don't love that. So it really relies on Ron Holland developing as a shooter to make some of the spacing on those lineups work.
Cade Cunningham, he was like kind of important to this team. I don't know.
Maybe a little bit. Yeah.
What struck you most about his sort of, I think it was an arrival for many, it was affirmation for others, but what just struck you most about how he improved last year?
Okay. So if you want to talk about arrival, you know what was really funny, Dan? Watching his free throw rate just like spike after he was named to the All-Star team. Just like the dumbest thing in the world. It's like, oh, this guy's an All-Star? Like he can finally get the calls we've been begging for the last 2.5 years.
I don't think his foul rate ended up being that much higher, though, in the grand scheme of last season, did it? I know it went up a little bit. I didn't think it was up like precipitously. I'll have to double check that.
It was check pre and post All-Star break. It was something we noticed at least. But yeah, no, he was really effective last year. The thing that I was most swayed by was how much it seemed like this was his team now, and how that belief in himself and the team's belief in him kind of grew and swelled as the season went along. There were big moments early in the season where he came through for them in a way that made you feel like, okay, this is something that we can expect of him. There was the two-way sequence against Atlanta where he like drove past Dyson Daniels, finished with the left, they gets the bucket, tough bucket, claims the lead. They call timeout, they come out, they run a set, like somehow Okongwu ends up with the ball under the basket. Cade blocks it to seal the game. And it's just like stuff like that, like just did not happen before. And that's the sign that like, again, like this is the guy who makes those things happen and like helps preserve wins. Are there areas to improve? Like, yeah, absolutely. I think you saw his 3-point shooting to me is the area in which I want to see the most improvement. I know for the longest time we've talked about turnovers in his handle. His handle got better last year, but there were still some kind of questionable decisions that I think are after 3 years, I'm just kind of baking those into the rest of the cake. But you saw last year in the playoffs when the Knicks no longer felt like they had to perceive of Cade as a threat from 3, his offensive effectiveness dropped. And it wasn't like bad. It was just like it was not good enough. I think he shot 17% from 3 in the playoff series, which like just isn't good enough. You would hope that the addition or like the reintegration of Jaden Ivey and Karis LeVert maybe helps him get off the ball a little bit, especially after the Jaden Ivey injury. There was a lot of like just him dribbling, like making
The Schroeder acquisition
offense.
was a breath of fresh air, like for that exact reason.
Yeah. And it's not like Schroeder was like the heaviest paint touch guy in the world, right? But like they really needed someone else who could just dribble the basketball while he was on the court. And so like, and I believe he's a much better spot up shooter than off the dribble shooter, like same as most case for everybody. But you really see he wants to play the game like 18 feet and in. He wants to drive, or he wants to get guys on his hip. He wants to post. He wants to get those jump hooks like back to the middle, or he wants to like come off a screen, like diagnose what the defense is doing and get like lobs into Duren or spray the ball out to shooters. And the big step for him is getting more comfortable coming off screens set higher on the floor and like taking pull-up threes, right? And making those pull-up threes. There's a lot of complaints about how Anthony Edwards was just like taking 12 threes a game, but like that really opened up the rest of the floor for everybody else on the Wolves. We saw that a lot, I think, in the what was their second round series? Not the Lakers, but
the Clippers, were they the Clippers team?
No.
What is what is time?
Golden State.
Okay.
Yeah, you saw that a lot in the Golden State series, in my mind. And so it's like that would be the thing where I would want Cade to improve the most. And I think he knows that. I think he knows that.
Do you think that they're built, if you have LeVert, if you have Ivy, if you maybe want to let Ausar do a little bit more, are they built to give him more of those, like, call them either in-game breaks or like lightening his or diversifying his offensive workload better than they were last year?
I think so. Yeah. I think there's a lot more. He's not a bad like off-ball screener, so I think there's putting more shooting around him. And having more ball handlers enables him to like set some screens and make some stuff happen on defense. I would like to see them lean a little bit more into Ausar Thompson as a ball handler while Cade's on the floor, because you want those guys playing together, as opposed to like not opposed to a LeVert, but I see more lineups in where like LeVert's on the floor and Cade isn't, than like lineups where like both of those two guys are on the floor. But yes, I do think they have enough to get there. Like if LeVert gets hurt again, or like God forbid, like Ivy gets hurt again or is delayed in his recovery or something, then like that starts to look a little rickety, right? The Marcus Sasser, Cade Cunningham minutes were not amazing.
We had the Tobias Harris discussion already. Stewart was also super important to this team last year. I think when you're looking at what struck people the most as they look and they just saw like he wasn't a 3-point shooter anymore. And I know that he trafficked in low volume, high hesitance type of looks. But if you ever want to get to a point, you mentioned this before too, where you want to have Ausar Thompson and Ron Holland on the court together and lean into all defense, I could see those shots from Stu's spot becoming pretty important. Is there a chance that we see him get back to more of that, or what went into deciding to have him not? I know he's playing the 5 more now, so that helps, but I'm just curious as to what was it that much of a non-weapon, or the payoff wasn't that great that they don't want to use him in that way anymore?
I don't know if it was a payoff thing. I think it was more of an identity thing. They asked Stu to expend a lot of energy on defense. And so having him kind of just like set screens in space was fine. But he was much more effective as like a DHO hub, right? As a guy who's setting screens to free up Malik Beasley to make shots. Um, I think that additionally, like especially after the Jaden Ivey injury, like Marcus Sasser and Dennis Schroeder again, like aren't like the heaviest paint touch guys in the world. So it's not like he had like the best PNR chemistry to work with to be a great diver or a great pick and pop guy. You'd see lineups where it was like Schroeder, who's like a good, not great 3-point shooter, and Malik Beasley, who's like drawing all the defense's attention, like Ron, Stu, and like one other guy. And you'd see the defense just be like, all right, like we'll pack the paint. Like you guys can do whatever. And there were definitely opportunities for Stewart to take some of those shots that I felt like he didn't take because like Malik Beasley was just like shooting flames out of his hands. And so the better call was to get like to come up, my guy's in the paint, I'm going to get the ball, I'm going to set a screen, like I'm going to get Malik Beasley an open shot. We've seen like summer workouts, but we've seen a little bit more of the like shot the shooting like take precedence in Stewart's workouts this offseason. I hope they return to some of that. I don't ever think he'll be like Miles Turner, but like yeah, I do think that there's some there with like some offensive diversity with Stu. With Tobias, like Tobias was great last year. Tobias was everything.
You could have made the case he was their second. If you were going wire to wire, he could have been their second most important player. Ausar Thompson comes back and was like that, but when you're factoring in sort of a wire to wire impact, it might have been him.
Yeah, and the difference when Harris could play and when he couldn't play was very noticeable. And again, I think it's more of a function that they didn't have another guy who really did what Tobias could do. They still don't have another like wing-sized wing player who can dribble, pass, and shoot. Right? They have guys who can dribble. They have like wing-sized players who can shoot and like they can put Duncan on the wing. But they don't really have anybody who can do all three, and Tobias can do all three. With that said, Tobias he's getting up there. He was definitely like he played the Knicks series like really feistily, but I thought he slowed down a little as the season went on, and they were asking him to do a lot, so it was totally understandable. And he's a really important player for this team, but you would like him to be less important, not because of anything he's doing wrong or anything, but because like that would mean other guys had made strides to put them like higher on the food chain, right?
Yeah, and it's also just, I think when they signed him initially, whatever people thought about the value of the deal, it's like, oh, well, that's sort of a contract that's built to trade if they make a bigger move. And no, you don't overthink getting rid of Tobias Harris, whether it's in a trade or he's going to be a free agent next summer. But you don't have his, like, unless you're really a believer in Bobi Klintman, like, you don't have that replacement lined up for him. So, there's not even anyone on the roster really, like, checks two of the boxes that he gives you. And the most important thing from that spot, just based off some of the players you have on the wing, is just, like, the shooting and, like, the respect that he provides from the perimeter. And so I have found it fascinating that they haven't looked to, I guess, change that up, but I also don't know, like, what is the opportunities that they actually passed on that we would have been sitting here and praising them for making that move.
Right. It's like, Naz Reid wasn't really an option. Like I was kind of crossing my fingers and hoping like maybe like a Jaren Jackson Jr. or something like shook loose in the offseason. Not really an option. The draft, there were some interesting prospects. Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops and formerly of Detroit Bad Boys and the Pistons Pulse, great guy. He was all in on Maxine Reynaud, the like 7-foot kid from Stanford.
Okay.
Like that would have been cool as a guy who could both like shoot and protect the rim and like was a little bit more mobile than you'd expect a 7'3" guy to go. They didn't end up going in that direction. That was a little disappointing actually. So they still kind of don't have that answer on the roster. Like again, like if you squint, like maybe it's Ron Holland. If you squint like real hard, like maybe it's Bobi Klintman. You probably just need to close your eyes if it's Bobi Klintman. Um, but they don't. It is still kind of a roster issue that they don't have that guy. If something happens to Tobias, like injury wise, and again, like he's he's on the wrong side of 30. It becomes really
Javante
tough.
Green's show,
Well,
right? Javante Green, get on in there.
JB probably loves him some Javante Green.
I
So
love Javante Green. He's so scrappy, has like sneaky pop to him. I'm all in. I think Javante Green is an NBA player. I'm all in on Javante Green.
if Javante was 6'7" instead of 6'4", like I'd be
Yeah.
right there. I'd be right there with you. But like, yeah, as the case stands, like if something happens to Tobias, like they kind of don't have any like way of replicating that. Then you're starting, if that happens, you're starting to get into like, all right, do we like start Stu and like try and do that weird dance again? Do we start Ron Holland and ask him to guard fours that he's probably like too small to guard at this point in his career, and just like toughen up for 15 games, man? Like, sorry about that. Do you go small and play like like Duncan Robinson at the 4 or something? It's just like you lean more heavily into the offense side of things than you perhaps like because of the injury. So yeah, Tobias is sneakily like very, very important to this team.
Can we go through some of the other young guys / unknowns on this roster and just get your thoughts and expectations for them moving forward?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's start with clearly your favorite player on this roster, Marcus Sasser.
I feel so bad because Marcus Sasser's not a bad NBA player. I don't know if I don't know if I've used this term in the podcast before, but I feel like Marcus Sasser is like a quadruple A NBA player. Where it's like he's too good for the G League, but he's not quite good enough to be somebody's like full-time backup point guard. Size limits him to playing the point guard position when like he's really more of an off-ball guy or like an isolation scorer than like a playmaker for others. He shot the ball pretty well. He's a good enough shooter to where you feel comfortable like having him on the floor. But yeah, the lack of playmaking for others paired with like he was billed as this like really good undersized but really good guard defender like coming out of school. We haven't seen that. He's been like fine, not like amazing, but fine. And so it's like, yeah, he's fine. I would like to see him traded, not because like I don't want him on the team, but because I think like if he were playing for like Charlotte or the Wizards, like that would be put him in a position to where like he could showcase more of his offensive skills and perhaps like do better for himself from like a contract perspective. But like, yeah, on this team, he's probably not going to get to do that unless there's like a slew of injuries. And even then, like his limitations would shine out more than what his capabilities do.
Where are we at with Klintman? It seems that I know where you're at with him. He's like kind of sometimes the way he moves away from the ball. And I was in on him. My very cursory scouting process. I was in on him last year.
Yeah,
entering last year. Excuse me.
I wish he was better. Like he is. It's hard to find guys that size who move the way he does and can pass the way he does. He's a really good passer, really creative and inventive passer. But the shots don't go in as much as you'd like them to, and he's not as good with the ball in his hands as a driver as you'd otherwise like him to be. And so right now he's kind of just like a high post efficient passer who can like move and get out in transition and impact the game that way. But like otherwise he kind of doesn't do that much. I thought his summer league was pretty disappointing on the whole. And so I hope for him, my thing would be like go be a like 45% shooter from 3 in the G League and get to a place where it's like we know what you do. You rebound and you shoot, and like that is the thing you do, right? And if you can do that, like there could probably be an NBA spot for you. Like maybe not in Detroit, maybe somewhere else, but like if you can shoot that well and move that well, pass that well, and rebound, like there's a spot for you in the league.
I do get the sense that Pistons fans are in love with Tolu Smith. Are you among those?
I like Tolu. He's a little undersized, which is a problem, but he has great energy. Is a good rim protector despite being undersized. I thought he played pretty well in summer league, and he really importantly, like he knows his role. He never tries to do anything like outside of the role of like rim running, rim protecting, like big man, which is really valuable because like you've been to summer league, Dan. You see these like guys who are like, hey man, like I'm trying to get paid, like I can do stuff. And it's like this is not good basketball. So I really appreciate that Tolu kind of knows his role. Yeah.
Where are you at with Daniss Jenkins?
Daniss Jenkins really impressed me in summer league. He was probably the most impressive player. He was the standout player of summer league to me, because he looked a lot more comfortable as a shooter. I don't remember his G League numbers off the top of my head, but I don't think he was like a great shooter in the G League last year. But he is taller than Sasser, a worse shooter, but a better playmaker than Sasser, and somehow like a better defender than Sasser. Or I saw him make more impact plays in summer league on the defensive side of the ball than I've seen like Marcus Sasser do. And so there's a legitimate case to make that like Daniss Jenkins should probably be the third point guard on this team. If
Okay.
If one of those like if one of those guys was an undrafted free agent and the other one was the like guy you traded up to the 27th pick or whatever in the draft to get, like maybe the roles would be reversed. But as right now as it stands, like Daniss is probably destined for another season in the G League, but I'm definitely like keeping my eye on him. He popped a lot in summer league.
I'm keeping my eye on Chaz Lanier. I know the percentages weren't there in summer league, but I think he's going to be a really good shooter. The way he's able to map the court away from the ball, even some of the stuff that he's able to do as a trailer, getting into his pull-up twos. I'm actually a pretty big believer in him. Do you share those thoughts at all?
I don't. I'm sorry,
fair
Dan.
enough.
No, I do think Chaz can be a really good shooter. He was a really good shooter in college, and like I thought he played slightly disappointingly in Vegas, but that was just because like
I go off vibes from Vegas to where I just throw the percentages out the window, and if I like the way the player moves, or it's like if I think they can get the shots up and they'll eventually go in, that's my, at least if you're a rookie, and sometimes if you're a sophomore, if you were a good, if you're coming out of a role, and had Ron Holland been bad in summer league, that's okay. Like we're a little concerned.
Yeah.
Then, but I just go off vibes for most of the rookies.
So the nice thing you can say is like he's a second round guy. Like if he doesn't work, it's not the worst thing in the world. What I will say is, so my read pre-draft on Chaz was that like, even if he works, he's kind of just a shooter, and you probably needed a little bit more ball handling or playmaking or defense, like from that kind of role. The level of shooter you have to get to in order to contribute at the NBA level, if all you do is shoot, is so high that I think that's like an unreasonable burden to place on a second rounder. And so I would have preferred them get, another player in like the Bobi Klintman like phenotype, right? I would have preferred like maybe another center because like I like Paul Reed. Paul Reed's great. I don't know if Paul Reed is like an actual like center, right?
No, what is he sick? He's 6'9", right?
Yeah.
So he's pretty small.
Yeah. And so it's like there were other options I thought they could have gone at that spot that like even if they don't work out from a like talent development perspective, like maybe they work out from like a roster redundancy perspective. As it stands right now, like I don't know, Chaz is going to spend a lot of time with the G League team and
shooting 50% from three. He's going to have enough 5-assist games to make you believe. I could feel it. We're going to circle back next year, and you're going to say, I think he should be the third guard.
I hope you're right.
Are you ready to enter the cookie cutter / lightning round portion of the podcast?
Delicious. Let's do it.
So you've already, I think, hinted at what your pick is going to be, but since this is the cookie cutter portion, what is this team's biggest weakness to you when just looking at them on paper?
Yeah, it's that 4 spot. It's the spot behind Tobias and replacing Tobias Harris, like if he gets hurt. Again, like I don't know what they really do. You're running a patch job at that point if something goes wrong at that spot. So that's something I'm just keeping my eye on for future roster construction purposes.
Is there anything about this team, strength, storyline that's flying under the radar right now that you think should be discussed more?
So I think Hmm. I think the
Chaz
contract.
Lanier. Did I steal it already? Did we talk
No.
too much about
I think the contract extension situation is getting like a little underplayed. Like there's such good vibes around the team that like nobody wants to like ruin the vibes. But
Mhm.
like there's definitely, if you start losing games and it does become more of a like, hey, like what's gonna happen with my contract? Like, am I gonna end up like we're gonna do this? We're gonna lose, like, and I'm gonna have to take the qualifying offer. I do think there's a potential for downside there that's getting underplayed. It'd be nice to just like kind of get that resolved, get everybody happy, or just like figure out like what some trade scenarios, right? Not my preferred scenario, but like a thing you probably have to think about.
I've also wondered, I think this applies a lot to the what are they doing after Tobias Harris or behind Tobias Harris. It's so tough to answer that question without knowing how the season's unfolding. I'm curious as to what their appetite will be to improve in the middle of the season. Because are
Yeah.
you at a point where you think you're, and again, it will depend on record, but if you're sitting fifth, fourth in the East, because I think there's probably two or three teams that you can sit here with absolute certainty and say they will be better than the Pistons next year. And so if you're in that range of like 4 or 5, are you looking at like, oh, are we moving another first round pick, or are we giving up on one of the prospects that hasn't some, maybe it's an Ivy, is it a Duren, but you don't really have a long term center behind Duren right now. So I find they're a very good team. They have a lot of different options moving forward with the future, but I don't know that you could point to just like the expendable salary is supposed to be Tobias Harris, and it's
Mhm.
not at this point. And I think you could now make the case is like, is that Duncan Robinson's
Yeah.
functionality? But if you
Yeah.
don't have Malik Beasley on the roster, how like so it's that's what's fascinating to me is this feels like maybe they might futz and fiddle and do something small. But if they are even like good and they're not great and there might be opportunities, it just feels like they're gonna kind of, I don't know what the word is, go through this season without considering any serious type of transactions, no matter how good they are or maybe how much some people think they need it.
Yeah. It does very much seem like is like we still want to see what we got season, but it's like you made the playoffs last year, and there's space in the conference for you to ascend if you were willing to press the accelerator a little harder, right? But like you mentioned though, like that would involve probably trading one of the young guys, and like yeah, Tobias and Duncan Robinson are like your salary flotsam. Maybe even like a Karis LeVert if you're getting back like an equivalent like ball handler in the deal,
Yep.
or if like a Jaden Ivey proves himself capable of like just being a primary ball handler half the time. It's like okay, in a way that makes LeVert expendable. You're like okay, cool, you can do that. But yeah, there is not a lot of like trade pieces on this roster. No.
I feel like it'll just end up being a flyer to where it's like, are they Heat? And I don't think they are, but like, are they just willing to like, they're done with Nikola Jovic at some point because they're so cap space pilled for 2027. And I was also trying to think, like, what is the player? Like, yeah, they'd be a fun Giannis team, but I'm talking like a non-star type or someone who's close to it to where if I'm the Pistons, it would really get me to like want to make a move. And the name I came up with was if the Hawks blow it up and like Jalen Johnson just ambles his way onto the market. And even then, it's they might view him as like the tent pole to build around for the future. But it's there's again there are names that you could say like, yo, no, the Pistons should definitely. But I was trying to think of just
Yeah. No,
like what is the
you
name that might be gettable that would get the Pistons to think.
you want the name, Dan?
Yes.
So the other guy that came up in conversations as people were talking these offseason was Laurie Marketing, right? A
Mm-hmm.
guy who spaces the floor, is in the like the good age range, plays the right position. The problem is the contract. He makes a lot of money for a guy who, if everything like again with Duren and Ausar and like Ron, you'd be able to build kind of a cohesive like defensive unit like around Laurie. But like if you're paying Laurie 50 million and you're paying Cade 50 million and you're paying Duren like 24, 25 ish, and then Asar's extension comes up, and you're like, and all of a sudden you're like, wait, like this is a lot of money.
Yeah,
Like
that's
how good is this team? It's like that part's tricky, right? Ideally, you'd want a version of Laurie Markkinen that made $30 million instead of like 48 or whatever he makes now.
yeah. There's I mean, if you could get him and it's not a ton of value, but you're right. Like the contract, if you're planning on keeping even just one of Ivy and or
Yeah,
Duren, like because you have Holland and Ausar coming up behind them,
yeah,
it gets super complicated.
yeah.
What about this? This would be the guy, but I don't believe that he's available, even though there was that report. Like Trey Murphy would be an excellent fit
Oh yeah,
for this
that
Pistons
would
roster. I
that
just
would.
can't imagine that he's available. Although I don't know with
I mean,
Troy
we
Weaver over
do
there
have
in New
all Troy
Orleans.
Weaver's favorite players, right? That is the advantage the Pistons have. It's like we know who he likes. That's like Troy Weaver really loves Isaiah Stewart. It's like you put Isaiah Stewart in a Trey Murphy deal, like you get Kevon Looney back. Like maybe you start to cook a little bit, right?
Okay, so this actually feels like a pretty easy exercise for this team, but what's the 10-man rotation? It feels like there's just 9 locks of these guys will be getting regular minutes, and there might be some fighting towards the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, yeah. It's so your starters are most likely Cade, Ivy, Ausar, Tobias, Duren. Your bench is most likely like Karras, Duncan, Stu, Ron, question mark. Um, perhaps that question mark, is Malik Beasley, Dan. Uh, perhaps that question mark is Marcus Sasser, right? Uh, perhaps I don't think they'll go with a 9-man rotation. They liked the full bench lineups last year. I was in favor of that. I think that preserved guys. I think that preserved Cade and that preserved Tobias in ways that you probably want to continue. So yeah, I do think that there's some potential there for 10-man rotations. Yeah, maybe maybe early in the season that's like a Bobi Klintman as a way to say like, hey, like maybe he didn't have the best summer league, but we need to run this out to like see what he's got before things go forward. Maybe that's something a little funky, like hey, Paul, like you played pretty well like when we asked you to last year. Like how would you like to just like be a like weird double big lineup with Stu and like one of you gets to take like 2 threes per 36 possessions? It's like stuff can happen, right? But yeah, the 9-man core like seems pretty locked in, and that question mark remains a mystery.
This is to some extent matchup dependent, but what do you think winds up being their go-to closing unit? Is it just the starters, or is there a spot or two that you could see them futzing and fiddling with?
I think it's probably just the starters. Ivy is the most fungible, where like maybe if you need some more defense, it's Ron or something like that. If you need some more shooting, like maybe it's Duncan Robinson or something like that. But they probably want to close with their starting lineup most of the time.
Is there a weirdo lineup you want to see JB Bickerstaff trying this year?
So Dan, I've been begging for years for a lineup where Cade is
More
both.
double bigs? Yeah. Is that what?
Dan, I had to watch Marvin Bagley and James Wiseman. Like, don't do this to me. No, I've been begging for years for a lineup where Cade is the smallest guy on the floor, and like you have enough, like, and he is like maybe the worst defender, right? So like if you're conceiving that now, like he probably can't be the worst defender in this lineup, but you can put together like a Cade, Duncan, Ausar, Ron, Duren lineup that like kind of like fits that narrative. You can put together if you want to like space the floor a little bit more, you could put together like a Cade, Duncan Robinson, Tobias, Ron, like Stewart lineup, and just encourage Stewart to like stay out on the perimeter and like keep the floor spaced. But yeah, like that's the weirdish lineup. And like you could, I mean, like you could play Stewart and Duren together. You saw how that went. It actually didn't go terribly, but like that would be funky. I don't know if I'd like it, but it would be funky.
Paul Reed at the 3, maybe then in those minutes.
Yeah. So no, Dan, but give me your lineup because I know you're playing like Sasser, Ivy, and Cade like all in the backcourt together with like Ausar at the 4.
My lineup doesn't have Cade because I just want to see Ausar Thompson as like let's try to juice up his playmaking. So I would have Stewart, Robinson, Harris, and then I'm gonna just throw Chaz Lanier in there because I think that he could really shoot. And then it's Ausar Thompson, and it's just I'm having Stewart like he'll space on some occasions. So then I view it as Ausar plus 4 shooters. Now if Malik Beasley's back, I will allow him to replace Chaz Lanier in that lineup. I'll allow it. It'll take a lot out of me, but I will for sure allow it.
Yeah. Okay. I like the conceptualization of that lineup. Yeah. And that's definitely a lineup where it's like Ausar has to do all the ball handling because nobody else is going
No
to.
Levert, no Ivy, no Cade. That was on purpose. That wasn't an oversight. So before I force you to make some predictions, is there anything else, anyone else on this team about this team that we have not discussed that you think warrants conversation?
So this would be the spot where I bring up Daniss Jenkins, but because you are so thorough, you already had him in. So no, we're good.
Is he like, if you're looking at kind of the guys that could be like surprise, oh, they're in the rotation as like a 10th or 9th man, is that your pick for it? Do you think it could be Smith? And then it's all like, shit, he's on a two-way, like we're going to have to convert that.
I definitely think like Daniss Jenkins could be a surprise. It would not shock me if like training camp comes out and you're hearing a lot of like Daniss Jenkins looks really good in training camp. Like he's clawing minutes, like he's clawing his way in the lineups that we didn't expect him to. It's like, why? And like you come to the first preseason game and you're like, wait, why are Daniss Jenkins and Jaden Ivey on the floor together? Like that's kind of weird. It's like, what are they cooking? I definitely think that there's a possibility there. Yes.
So predictions time. How many games do you see them winning, and where do you see them landing in the regular season standings for the Eastern Conference?
All right, this is the tough thing. So let's level set expectations, right? You lose, you get the 6th seed, you avoid the play-in, you lose in the first round of the playoffs last season. For me, the goal this year should be for this team to win a first round playoff series. That should be the goal. You should look to advance in the playoffs. What makes that goal easier? A, staying out of the play-in. Just like, not having to worry about any of the BS that can or can't happen in the play-in. B, getting home court. Getting home court matters if you're trying to win an actual playoff series. So to do that, you have to win in the regular season, and you have to win probably in the neighborhood of like 45 to 47 games in the regular season. To me, that should be what the Pistons like shoot for. They should shoot for being like a 50-win team, land short of that, try and get the 4 seed, and like win your first round home court series. That should be the goal this season. Do I think they do that? No, I don't think they do that. I think between the improvements that the Magic made this offseason from a roster perspective, between like the wholesale revamp thing the Hawks have going on, the Hawks are really good and looked like I was not a Jalen Johnson person. Like he convinced me last year. They really missed him. Getting him back will be huge. And then obviously you've got like you got Cleveland, you got New York, you got Milwaukee, who
Giannis, Turner, and dudes.
Yeah, like I'm always reticent to count out Milwaukee ahead of the Pistons because the Pistons have just never been able to beat Giannis in any way, shape, or form. Even like other teams can, but like we can't. So like it's easy for me to be like, all right, like maybe that's like the 4th seed and like we get the 5th seed, and I hate that playoff matchup, right? But yeah, I would like for the Pistons to get into a spot where they're the 4th seed or higher. I don't think they get there, but like for me, if I hope they prove me wrong. I hope I'm in a space where they prove me wrong.
I think for them, it's like them maybe more so than any team in the Eastern Conference. Yeah, because like Orlando pushed all its chips in. Like progress isn't linear, and so if they end up winning like 41 or 42 games, but you come away thinking like Ron Holland shot really well from the floor, and we got more out of offense from Ausar, and Jaden Ivey looked really good both with and without Cade Cunningham, and it just broke. Things just broke wrongly in the East. That still can count as progress, and I think that's probably what fans need to remember. But they're also in a spot where I don't know where I would put them in the standings exactly, but how many teams we're sitting here today, early September, would you be prepared to guarantee are going to be better than them in the East next season? Like, it's probably 3?
Yeah, it's like Cleveland, New York, and a possible.
Yeah, like Orlando or Atlanta, maybe.
Yeah.
And then, like, I don't know what to feel about the Sixers. I'm never going to give them the benefit of the doubt at this point, but they're the mother of all wild cards.
Yeah, exactly. Sixers are really little, by the way, like without Embiid. That's a lot of guards.
Oh,
A lot of guards.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the dynamic between, and I'm assuming Quentin Grimes will be back. We're still waiting for that whole situation to play out. So, what's the matchup if you're looking at this through a postseason lens that either concerns you or you would find most fascinating? Again, as of early September, this is something that could, of course, change.
Yeah, definitely. The matchup I'd be most afraid of is again the Milwaukee matchup. Just never an answer for that Giannis guy.
I have an answer. Play him next to Kyle Kuzma, and there's the Pistons' answer. That's how you.
Just like mind control Doc into playing Kuzma 35 minutes a game.
It's Doc. You don't got to mind control him into doing anything like that.
No, but like good matchups. I think like we saw this in the playoffs. They match up sneakily like pretty well with New York. They played Cleveland very competitively, I believe, in like 3 out of the 4 games this season. Is that a matchup I like want? No, but like I don't think that's an atrocious matchup for them. I want to see how Indiana restructures things without Halliburton and without Turner. But
J-Huff is there, so I think they'll run everything through him is my guess. But
those were also some like pretty fun, pretty competitive games last season. I'd be curious to see more of that. In Atlanta, they beat Atlanta a lot last year because Cade can post up Trey, and that's like it's really funny to watch them like scramble everything so that doesn't happen, and then Cade just like makes it happen anyway. But Atlanta's like restructured their whole team and everything, and like maybe Kristaps plays, maybe Kristaps doesn't play, and like that changes the whole matchup or whatever. But yeah, like that's another team. Orlando's too damn big.
That's my pick though. Is I feel like somebody would like be put in the hospital during that between a Pistons Magic series. That would be you thought like Pistons Knicks was really physical, but I just feel like Pistons Magic would be a whole different type, like a different. You imagine Isaiah Stewart playing it, like if he's healthy and playing in that series, my God.
So like Stewart will be guarding Paulo by game 3, and it's just like chest to chest, just like a war every possession for 24 seconds because that's how long it takes Paulo to get to a shot. But
not anymore. He's got some space to work with now. Maybe not enough, but I don't think it'll take him that long anymore. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm begging for that team to get out and transition more. That was one of the fun things about what Cade and the Pistons were doing last year. So can I get one more prediction from you about this Pistons squad? Could be anything. You can take it wherever you want.
Jalen Duren signs an extension before the deadline. Jaden Ivey does not.
That'll create an awkward dynamic in the locker room.
Yes, it would.
I thought it was going to be more of like an all or nothing proposition with them to where it's, both of them will get an extension or nobody's getting an extension.
I think Trajan Langdon is very pragmatic. I think the gap between what both sides want is smaller on the Duren side. And I think that like as you get into camp, you like make stuff, you see these guys play together again. You're like, all right, like let's make this happen. Whereas I think like Jaden Ivey like has more to prove, can prove more, is capable of proving more. And so it's easier for me to see a scenario where he's like, no, like I'm going to ball out this year. Like we're going to win 50 games. I'm going to ball out and I'm going to make $30 million a year. And it's like, yeah, man, Godspeed, like go for it. But I don't know if Trajan Langdon wants to give you $30 million a year. So we'll see.
If you're predicting Duren gets an extension, I'm going to set the over-under on his contract at $24 million on average per year. You take the over or the under on that?
I'm going to take the over. I'd say it's like 25-ish. 4 years, $101 million a year.
Just to get the little extra spread out so that he's making $25.25 million a year.
Get the tiny extra. So like when Mark Williams signs for like 4 for $90, you can have JD like and his agent kind of like dap each other up and be like, see, we did better than this guy, right?
If the Suns give Mark Williams 4 years and $90 million after giving up a first, oh my God.
Put it past Matt HBO. Put it past him.
No, I won't put anything past
Say he won't.
That dude. Laz, this was great.
Matt, if you by chance are listening to this, just like pour more money into Michigan State NIL. Like that's what we need. Like stop wasting your time with these Phoenix Suns dudes. Like your money would be served better, like making everything about the Spartan Stadium experience like better. Put more money into NIL collective. Okay, I'm done. Thanks.
Rather than trying to hire people with Michigan ties to help him.
Yeah, it's like if you want to be in Michigan, just come back to Michigan, bro. Like we got you. Just write the check.
He's willing to write checks. He's also willing to having the self-own was like one of my favorite like social media posts of forever. He's reacting to ESPN saying the Suns are going to regress. He's like, yeah, well, they thought we were going to be good last year. Shows how
like
much
we showed them. It's like, is that what you? Okay.
Laz, this was fantastic as always, and thank you as always for giving me so much of your time. Are you able to tell our watchers, listeners, subscribers, audience members, whatever, where they can find you and any work that you would like to plug at this point?
Thank you, Dan, once again for having me. You said this was year 7, which feels wild to me. I feel so valued and blessed that after all these years, you're still like, you know what? I want to talk to that last guy about the Detroit Pistons. That means a lot.
And look, I just appreciate that you have a low bar for appreciating stuff. That's all I'm saying.
So you can still find me on the social medias at Laz Chance. That's at LAZCHANCE. You can still find anything that I have time to write at Detroit Bad Boys, which Vox or SB recently redid some stuff on the site. It looks pretty cool. Shout out to Fearless Leader Sean Corp for pulling everything together with that. And then I'd like to shout out Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops, who does a really great job just expanding the Pistons content space and is one of the dudes that I just really love talking to about basketball. So shout out to Bryce.
Thank you again, Laz. As you know by now, I'll be pestering you again in the future.
Can't wait.